So again, what I want to do here is talk about where groups work well and where they don't work well. We're going to kind of go through this again a bit quickly. So don't be stressed about kind of getting notes down, kind of take away the larger picture. And some of these I can especially highlight as they relate to how decisions are being made now. Okay, so that's the ones we'll try to jump through and focus a bit more on. Okay? Now, one of the things that can happen with groups, okay, is we can get into what we call social loafing. Okay? So social loafing occurs when there's reduced efforts, when working collectively than by ourselves, or in competition with others. And this is something we're all relatively familiar with. We've been in those larger groups. And in those groups, we basically find that someone doesn't do their part. Okay, so they don't do their part, they kind of start loafing. They're not working as hard as they would, as if they were doing this alone, or if they were doing it in competition. So this is what we see when we evaluate groups, and this is a key thing to know. This is one thing I want to make sure that you guys know, that in groups, it may feel more fun to do a task. Okay, you're engaging with others, you're satisfying that basic need. It's more fun than being there doing it on your own, but groups are not always more effective. Okay, so groups don't necessarily produce the maximum amount of output because of this social loafing. Okay, so originally this is called the Ringelmann effect, a horrible name, later called social loafing by Bib Latané. The idea here is that when he had men pull on a rope, same thing with oxen, when they believed that they were doing it with others, they pulled less hard. But when they believed that they were doing it in competition or alone, they pulled harder than when they were doing it with a group. Okay? So we see social loafing occur where everyone's not giving a maximal effort when they're in a group. Okay? Now, a question I'll pose for you guys is, in the case where there's group assignments, how would instructors like me decrease that social loafing? So think about this kind of on your own. Okay, this is something you can think about both for studying for the exam and for kind of dealing when you're doing with your own groups. Now, some of the reason that this happens, we see that social loafing, is diffusion of responsibility. Okay, so reduction in feeling responsible because others are present. So part of the reason why we don't necessarily get responses from students in a class is, again, this diffusion of responsibility. Okay, someone else is going to answer. Okay? We see this because of de-individuation. So individuals start to have kind of a lost sense of awareness. They're not held as accountable because they feel kind of more a higher degree of anonymity. Okay, so they feel like they're not necessarily responsible for what's going on, okay, because there's others around. They're not seeing themselves as kind of standing out, being able to be pointed out. Okay? We also see this happen in terms of the bad apple effect. So this idea here is that one bad group member, one person who starts to socially loaf, then causes others to loaf. Okay, so one person starts to not really contribute, you almost become a fool then to work as hard as you can because someone else isn't. So why don't I just kind of join them, go along kind of loafing with them? Okay, so it's called the bad apple effect. This idea that one bad apple can kind of spoil the whole barrel, and the whole barrel here in this case kind of being an example of kind of the larger group. Okay? So you see, groups don't necessarily work well because they loaf. Okay? Let me flip through here a little bit more because I want to hit on a few specific things. Okay, when groups do work well, and this is what I want you guys to really think about in terms of the decision making that's being done with the coronavirus around you, thinking about things in terms of your best decision making. We see groups work well when there's democratic leadership. And by that, I mean that the leadership is looking for input. They're considering everyone's input, kind of the different angles on things. Okay, so this allows them to gather more information. Okay, again, just like you guys know with social influence, the more information you have, the better you can be able to evaluate careful, persuasive messages. Okay? We see too that groups work well when each member takes on individual responsibility. Okay, so the more that you can promote this in a group, where individuals may be doing the task with others, but they're responsible for their piece, they can be identified as having to be responsible for that piece, the more important it is. Okay, so one of the things that you hear about is that coaches will say each player needs to be held accountable. Okay, the idea there is that in a large group, such as 12 players lining up in football, anything can happen at that point. It doesn't come down to any single person necessarily. Okay? But a coach is trying to say, well, hey, let's get rid of that diffusion of responsibility by saying everyone needs to take responsibility for their task. Okay, so each person needs to do their part. By doing that, they then can be successful overall. Okay? We see that what also is important is successful communication, cooperation, and information sharing. Okay, so Stacer and Titus and others, okay, and I'll kind of highlight this here, talk about how communication can really actually unfortunately break down in a group. Okay, so one of the things that we happen is that when we have group information, information that's not shared among the group doesn't get discussed. Okay, so I might have information about the coronavirus that others in the group might not have. Okay, maybe it's death rates, maybe it's uh, preventative measures. And because that's not common information to everyone else, I'm more hesitant to share it. Okay, so what ends up happening is when groups get together, they really focus on only sharing common information rather than sharing unique information. And in sharing common information, what ends up happening is that you don't get in some of that information that's rather important. Okay, so in the case of Stacer and Titus, they'll do this with candidates for political positions. Okay, let's select the best candidate for a position. And what they find is that when the good information that would really lean towards selecting the right candidate, okay, is not shared, they don't make good decisions. So to be in a good group, you need to successfully communicate. I mean, you need to bring out all the information, make others feel comfortable sharing information that may disagree with the group, okay, or may be unique, so that all that information gets out on the table, because groups aren't necessarily inherently good at doing that. Okay. We want to see too that groups have a high interdependence of members, okay, meaning that the group needs to work collectively together because the fate of the group is then linked to each other. Okay, this gets rid of that diffusion of responsibility, and it's an important piece here. Okay. We see too that groups are successful when they have membership diversity. And so the idea behind membership diversity is that you want individuals to have kind of unique and different perspectives. Okay, you want them to bring in different components. Because of this, it gives different kind of viewpoints and advantages. Okay, so vantage points. So you can see kind of how it might respond. A decision might affect one person differently. You might get unique information that you wouldn't consider. Okay, so again, the idea behind making good decisions is having this democratic leadership that to some degree really helps with keeping the group from kind of falling into some of these traps where groups don't work well, where there's diffusion of responsibility, there's not good communication, members aren't seeing related to each other, where you're missing kind of that diversity of perspectives and different takes on things. Okay. Give me one last second here. I want to see if there's any kind of last pieces where I want to make sure that we definitely talk about things there, okay? One thing I'll highlight here that we won't get a chance to get into, but I'll cruise through just real quick, is the idea of groupthink. And again, this kind of highlighting at least a little bit something that's important for what's going on now. The idea behind groupthink is the tendency for group members to think alike. Okay, so this idea here is that everyone is all acting in a very similar way, having the same kind of thoughts. And where we see groupthink happening is when there's pressure towards conformity. So everyone needs to get in line. You need to all get in agreement on something. You need to do it quickly. Where there's an appearance of unanimous agreement, meaning that everyone seems to all be in agreement on how something's happening. Okay, so I've had this happen in groups where we kind of start off, everyone seems like they're in agreement of something, and I'll make a point of stopping and saying, well, hey, does everyone really agree on this? Or are we just kind of going along with it? I want people to be able to dissent, to give kind of different takes on things. Okay. There's an illusion of invulnerability, meaning that the group is not going to be harmed based on those decisions. Nothing bad's going to happen to them. There's a sense of moral superiority where they feel like they know everything, okay, that they're at a kind of higher vantage point, they're smarter than everyone else, they're more moral, they can think things through better than others can. And so because of this, okay, they're making better decisions. Okay? And lastly, there's a tendency to underestimate opponents. Okay? These opponents may be other people, and maybe problems that they're dealing with where they're not really seeing the strength, the severity of the other of the issue that they're dealing with, or how the other opponent might think. They're really not evaluating this. Okay? So I want to highlight groupthink because I believe that this is something I have to be very careful of when making decisions. I think you can see some signs of groupthink occurring at different points of decision making. The video I have here, you can link to it. It'll walk you through an incident with the challenger of groupthink. It's an old video, but it does a great job walking through it. The book also does a nice job with groupthink as well. So make sure that you're spending some time with this because while we didn't get a chance to go through it too much, it is something that's very related to what's going on with decision making now. Okay? I want to say that I super appreciate you guys hanging in there today. There was a lot for us to cover to make sure that we were ready to go on the exam. But I think we've got the key points in terms of both social influence and groups. So I think we're in good shape there. So appreciate you guys taking notes. These notes are posted online. Again, you'll have the video so you can go through things if you'd like. Again, I'll release the exam on Wednesday morning. If If you have questions while you're taking it, email me. Again, I'll be in class on Thursday answering questions live. But let me pause at this point to see if you have any questions. I know you might need to get to other things right now, so if you need to jump off and go, that's fine. But I just want to check in with you guys. Again, I super appreciate you guys working hard, especially today, with taking notes. I saw you guys kind of diligently writing, staying with me. So let me pause to see if you have any questions, things I can clarify, things I can go back through. Okay, so
where exactly is Dropbox?
So Dropbox is part of Carmen. So you'll see if you go to the module with assignments, you should see a Dropbox there. So basically, it's just a link for uploading the assignment. So what I would say is just make sure to give yourself a little bit of time before the due date to turn it in. If you're running into problems, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it should be there though, so just let me know. Other questions, things I can check in on with you guys. All right, guys. Well, good luck on the exam. Let me know if you have questions. Most important though, make sure that you take care of yourselves. I will see you guys on Thursday if you have questions. Otherwise, class will resume with lectures next Tuesday. Okay, so stay healthy, guys. Good luck on the exam.